the Agile brand.
Welcome to the B2B Agility Podcast, where we look at the factors that drive success in B2B marketing, with a focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make B2B brands stand out and thrive in a competitive marketplace. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that my latest book, Priority is Action: 7 Principles for Better Strategies, Decisions, and Outcomes, is now available. In it, I give ideas and insights for leaders and teams that need to make meaningful progress on their priorities. After all, our priorities are what we do, not what we say we'd like to do. You can find Priority is Action on Amazon or learn more on my website, gregkihlstrom.com. Now let's get on to the show. Today we're going to talk about maintaining agility in teams and the AI maturity that leaders in the B2B enterprise space should be striving to achieve in the months ahead. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Tommi Marsans, Associate Director, Marketing Technology Strategy at Verizon Business Group. Tommi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started by you giving a little background on yourself as well as your role at Verizon Business Group, and maybe just a quick overview. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Verizon, but just a little overview of what Verizon Business Group does.
Sure. So I'll start with the last one first. Verizon Business Group brings connectivity, both wireless and wired network services to companies, medium, small, large, global enterprise, really across the spectrum. So above the network as well, there's services, there's MEC on the edge, there's 5G solutions, there's a lot of offerings, basically keeping companies connected to their customers and to each other. I have been working in marketing operations, marketing, and digital services for about 30 years now. So I've seen the evolution of different marketing technologies from Excel spreadsheets all the way through AI and generative AI most recently. What I do today for Verizon Business Group is I lead the marketing next best action team. And that's kind of a fancy way of saying that we leverage AI and machine learning to drive better customer experience by understanding and tailoring customer experience to a one-to-one kind of experience with them.
Great. Well, let's get started here. And so the first topic I wanted to talk with you about is based on a recent LinkedIn post that you made talking about teamwork and leadership. You hit on a few really interesting and salient points there and wanted to discuss a little more about these. So for instance, you wrote that team building isn't just about camaraderie, it's about harnessing our collective potential to achieve remarkable results. So in your experience, what does it take to get teams beyond that camaraderie and to start really working with each other to create work that does get those remarkable results?
So, two things I think are really important. There's a common goal. So, you have to agree on where you're going. It's like any other kind of relationship. You kind of have to over communicate around what your final goal is. What is it that you want to achieve? Where do you want to go? And how do you want to get there? And then, secondly, is trust. And again, same as any other relationship. Once you build trust, you can kind of let go and you don't have to worry so much about the details. You can trust your fellow coworkers and other people on the team to kind of have your back. And I think that creates a level of not just camaraderie, not just superior results, but also just a happier team. It's just more enjoyable to work with people that you trust and know and have a common vision with.
Yeah. So what should leaders be doing to foster those kinds of results?
So, in order to really gain trust of people and to kind of get everybody on the same page, you got to be authentic. You really have to be you, even if you think that you isn't somebody that would be corporate enough, say. You got to bring all of it, even if you think it's off the mark a little bit. So, people can read authenticity. They know whether or not you're giving them a company line or whether or not it's really speaking from the heart. And I think that authenticity comes with a little bit of vulnerability too. Telling your own story, making sure people see you as human and connecting on that human level. So I think as a leader, being authentic and being authentically supportive of people on your team, listening to them, active listening is huge. It's been around for a while as an emotional quotient kind of thing. But having the team be seen and listening to them and them, respecting their point of view and what they have to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we both work quite a bit in marketing technology, and there's the people process platforms phrase that's often used a lot. And, while a lot of people often think that the focus needs to be on platforms because it's technically complex and all that, it's really kind of the first two that can often make or break. In the case of successful teams that kind of get past some of those things that you just talked about, it can really make a successful team. But process and operational structure as well, can have a big impact, again, either way, on the success of transformation initiatives. How do you keep teams focused on the right things from that process standpoint to get more successful outcomes?
So we're not quite in the Skynet days yet. So AI really hasn't taken over. So, but there, people in process really are being enhanced by AI, really are being enhanced by the technology, and so it is an assist and not the thing. And so, if you really focus on what makes people's jobs easier, focus on how to make processes more efficient. And the way I've found to do that is to ask, what keeps you up at night? And then secondly, really to look at the process and see where the bottlenecks are. What are the things that take a lot of time that really shouldn't, that could be automated? And so you automate those little pieces that may not seem like a big deal, but to the person who has to go through that process, it becomes kind of a big deal or at least an irritant. And so focusing on the people and the process and on their experience, whether it's the customer, whether it's the salesperson, whether it's other employees, whether it's a customer service rep, whether it's a rep in the store, focus on the person who is customer facing, make their job easier, and it makes everything else better.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there's certainly a bit of maybe anxiety around, what exactly is going to be the AI role. I mean, you mentioned the Terminator example of, we're
Right.
not quite there where, the machines are running everything. At least give me a decade or so. But there is some anxiety about, is AI going to take my job, or is AI going to take parts of my job, or whatever. But the way you kind of lay it out there is as AI as augmentation. It, to me, from an optimistic standpoint, it's really AI doing the things that humans aren't really as good at or like to do anyway. Is that kind of how you see it?
That's exactly how I see it. It's the part of the day that you don't really want to do. I mean, 100 years ago, we had to do manual labor. We don't have to do that anymore because we've automated it. And it doesn't feel like we've lost anything in the process, right?
Right.
Something very similar is happening in this kind of knowledge revolution or technology revolution. It is not that we'll lose parts that we enjoy, it's we're going to lose the parts we don't enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, switching gears a little bit, name of this podcast is B2B Agility. So, I wanted to talk a little bit, focus on that last word there, talk a little bit about how you think about agility and you and your team's work. So, regardless of, formal approaches, whether Scrum, Safe, Scrum Ban, Kanban, whatever the process or methodology or whatever is used, how do you look at the need for agility in the enterprise, and what do you do to enable it as much as possible?
So, agility to me means being able to react to either the marketplace or the customer. And so, I think it's a critical component for companies these days to be agile, and not in the sense of, like you said, Scrum Safe, not that kind of agile, but to really be flexible and quick to respond to customers' need. In this age where we are getting assist from AI, where we are advancing in technology, it's almost expected now that you will be understood by any company that you work with or encounter. And that level of expectation of, you know who I am and you know what I want, is now almost ubiquitous. So if a company is not agile, if they're not able to respond quickly to a customer's needs or the changing marketplace, they will very quickly lose out. I mean, I would say, Zoom is a great example of that. We were not using Zoom when we first entered the pandemic. And, other companies that, were in that space lost out because Zoom was able to adapt very, very quickly. And so it's that agility, that ability to adapt that I think becomes a critical factor. It's now a differentiator. I think shortly and very soon it will no longer be a differentiator. I think it'll be a foundational piece.
If you're like me, it's hard to keep up with all the trends, fads, and critical concepts that marketing and CX leaders need to know about. To help, I've partnered with some of the world's most notable thought leaders to create the Agile Brand Guides book series. These are short reads, 3 hours or less, on important topics like generative AI, customer data platforms, MarTech infrastructure evaluation, customer journey orchestration, agile marketing, and more. They're available in print, digital, and audio formats and quickly get you up to speed on critical topics for marketing and CX leaders and aspiring leaders to understand. Search for Agile Brand Guides on Amazon or go to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. That's agilebrandguide.com for more. Before we get back to the show, I just wanted to remind you to hit the follow or subscribe button on your app to make sure you get notified when new episodes of this show are available. Now let's get back to the show. And so, one of the key things of agility that you just touched on is, it's not enough to simply see what happened and be able to analyze it quickly. You have to do something with it, right? So there has to be that feedback loop to be able to respond and react. But also, there's also a need to incorporate brand new ideas that things that haven't been tested yet. And so one of the things I see with a lot of AI and machine learning is there definitely is, in a good way, an increased focus on this kind of continuous learning and optimization. But how do you balance these two ideas of, one is learning from what's already happened, and two is encouraging net new ideas, and again, things that may not be wholly successful but still get you closer to the right answer. So how would you coach someone on finding the right balance between those two things?
Well, I would say that you don't know what you don't know. So you know what's happened in the past, and in some cases you can do regressive modeling to predict a little bit of what's going to happen in the future. But the way that we use AI is we use it not just to kind of predict what's happening real time, but also to test very quickly and measure very precisely any lift that might come from one variable change or another variable change. So if I would encourage people to test small measurable things and to scenario it out. So if it used to be that we would just, put mailers in the postal stream and we would wait 3 weeks to see if anything happened. And
Right.
that's not really what we can't even do that anymore with email. We've really got to be able to take small segments, test one thing against another, and then quickly enable the winner of that test. So I would say, we were talking about agility before, the ability to be agile with your testing as well, to, and I know it's a cliche, but to fail fast. And we're no longer failing fast in weeks or days. We're failing fast now in seconds. And that's what AI and machine learning really unlocks for us, the ability to do that very quickly.
Yeah, and to do that in the enterprise, which I think stereotypically moves a little slower than a startup. So I mean, I think that's a huge win for enterprise organizations, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think AI is an approach. It's not necessarily a particular platform.
Mm.
It's an approach that platforms use, and you can train it on anything. So if you train it on testing processes. You can do that. You can train it to test on particular outcomes. If you want somebody to buy something, if you want them to go somewhere, if you want them to follow a particular happy path, all of those things. But it's really what you train it on. And so that's also a big key element.
Yeah, yeah. And so, last thing I wanted to talk about here, here we are, the end of January here, so I think we can still safely do a little recap of last year. Maybe the cutoff is February 1, but this episode's airing on the 30th, so we're still good. I don't know if we can still say Happy New Year, but I think we're still good to talk about last year. So, you and I chatted on my other podcast, The Agile Brand, last year, talking a bit about AI's impact, but wanted to unpack things a little bit more. And, so to me, 2023 was a big year of experimentation for a lot of organizations when it came to AI. There's all the hype, there's all the new companies and platforms popping up, as well as existing platforms adopting, whether it was Gen AI or other AI features. But can you talk a little bit about how the hype around things like generative AI may have shaped the way that you and maybe other enterprise leaders are thinking about marketing technology success in 2024?
I would say towards the end of 2023, all anybody could talk about was generative AI.
Yeah.
And it was a little hard for me personally to get my head around because I couldn't think beyond Chat GPT and kind of open source generative AI. And then I learned about not having it an open source, but focusing in on your own data and your own content and running the same process against that internal proprietary data. When we kind of tested out generative AI for, say, customer facing content and verbiage, it just wasn't really that great. It's really good at writing research papers, but it's not really great at kind of generating marketing material or customer facing communications.
Yeah.
But if you feed it, if you keep the bounds within sort of what you've already got in your communications library, it actually works really well. And so I think where people are going is to start leveraging AI, like I said, as a process, and then generative AI as a process, but within their own private, controlled data and ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's company specific. I've also, there's some work in like domain specific, like industry specific knowledge as well. And definitely, yeah, I've, like I said, I played around a lot with it, but when it came to client work and things, there are definitely limitations if it's an open-ended kind of ask. So, I'm seeing some pretty interesting, let's call them enterprise grade Gen AI stuff coming out, which is interesting. So, from that perspective, then, there's a lot of organizations looking at this stuff. I think, whereas last year was a lot about experimentation, I think this year is going to be a little more about kind of reconciling and operationalizing what makes sense and maybe discarding some of the things that are, purely hype perhaps. But, where would you say that, smart B2B enterprise organizations should be in their AI maturity at this point to either at least keep pace or pull ahead? What are some of the characteristics that their AI data or related programs should have?
So I think the way to really start is, so we kind of threw, it was a little spaghetti against the wall. We kind of threw
Right.
AI problems and then, waited to see what happened and what the improvements were. I think now, if we start to focus on the outcome, if we focus on the action that we want and the problem specifically, and then let AI kind of work that problem or work towards that outcome, the more data that you can give it, the better it will optimize the process or the path to that outcome or solving that problem. Companies right now, I think, have to embrace AI. I don't think you can get away from it. I think now it is a must have. We talked about agility before, and AI is the ultimate platform and tool for that kind of agility. So, kind of, if I were looking at a crystal ball and looking at the future, I would say companies are going to have to come up with novel uses of AI. And because I sort of view AI again as a process or a way to do work, to be agile, to apply against different problems, I think we're going to see really novel uses come out of that. And the way we look at it right now, I think, is very naive. I think we look at AI and we think, oh, it's kind of cool. It just does things faster. I
Yeah.
think we're going to find that as we begin to leverage it more and more in different ways, and even layer AI and machine learning on top of AI and machine learning, and we have these microservices and maybe decisioning at the edge and democratizing some of this decisioning across different places of the enterprise, I think we'll be surprised at what kind of evolves from that and blooms from that.
Yeah, yeah, and so along those lines, I mean, you just mentioned a few really interesting things, but what are you most excited about for this year? Are there even other technologies or other opportunities that you think are either ready for prime time or at least ready for some experimentation?
I would say the augmented experience of the employee. That's what I'm really excited
Mm,
about. We as humans tend to think that the only way humans can deal with other humans is face to face, one on one, active listening, like the things that we were talking before about building trust. What I think I would like to see, and I think it's coming, is that augmented reality, so that when I'm having a conversation with you, there's a natural language processing, listening to what I'm saying and recommending new things to talk about. And I
mm.
think we'll find that, that's our brave new world.
Yeah, yeah. That actually that'd be interesting for for my interviews here. Even so,
Right?
good idea. Interesting, huh? That's awesome. Well, Tommy, thanks so much for joining the show. One last question before we wrap up here. Given a lot of great insight and advice already, but going back to the topic of agility, what's one recommendation you'd have for B2B marketers to stay agile in the months ahead?
I would say look at the thing that keeps you up at night. What is your biggest pain point? And what's the technology solution that you could apply to that pain point that would help you focus on the customer, that would help you focus on the employee experience, that would help you focus on the next big thing? I would recommend that companies really look at their technology stack and allow that technology stack to alleviate their biggest pain points.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Love it. Well, again, I'd like to thank Tommi Marsans, Associate Director, Marketing Technology Strategy at Verizon Business Group, for joining the show. You can learn more about Tommi and Verizon Business Group by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the B2B Agility Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.b2bagility.com. That's b2bagility.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Kihlstrom on Amazon. Until next time, stay focused and stay agile.
The Agile brand.